Alright, in this video I'm going over the basics of a STD list. A list is just a container for storing things, just like an array or a vector, but it does not have random access, and that is because it is just a linked list. It is a doubly linked list. So to get started, we're going to include list up at the top here, and then I will show a couple of examples. The first example is going to be a list of strings. And so to create a list of strings, you're going to type list, open angle brackets, and then type string inside here, or whatever data type you want your list to be of. Then you can now think of this whole thing as your data type. And as with any other data type, it's followed by the name for that list. So I'm just going to call this my strings. Now we have two different functions for adding information to our list. We have push front and push back. And so if I want to add something to the back of my list, I'll type my strings dot push back, and then any string will do. I'll just push Dave on the list. And we can also push front. And we'll put Sally on the list. And I'll go ahead and push back a few more, just so we have a few strings to work with here. Okay, so now I have 5 different strings on my list. If I want to display the list, I will need a while loop, and I will also need an iterator. Remember, we don't have random access, so I cannot use brackets like I would with an array. To create the iterator, you're going to give the data type, which is a list of strings, and then you put 2 colons there and you type iterator, and then you give your iterator a name, typically ITR. And an iterator is just, you can think of it as a pointer. It's going to point at some object in the list. It can be dereferenced just like a pointer can. And we have a few functions that work with iterators. To get our iterator pointing at the first element in the list, we can say ITR equals the list name, my strings, dot begin. And begin will return an iterator to the first element in the list. And now if we wanted to display everything, we could use a for loop. We can use our iterator as it is because it's already pointing at the first element. Our condition will be while the iterator does not equal my strings dot end. So end is going to return an iterator to the end of the list. And then we can use the postfix operator there to increase our iterator, and it will move from element to element as we go through the list here. And then I can just see out iterator in line. Now, like I said, an iterator is a lot like a pointer, so I need to dereference it if I want the information at that point in the list. And there we have our list of names. What if we want to remove a name from the list? So I still need my iterator. I'm going to start at the beginning, and I'm going to search through the list until I find some specific name. And there's several ways of setting that loop up, but one way of doing that is just to say while my iterator does not equal, and then we can give the name we want to remove. Let's say we want to remove Bob. Now I need to dereference my iterator so that I am comparing strings with strings. And while we're not on Bob, we're starting at the beginning here. We're going to go through the list until we see Bob. So ITR plus plus. When this loop has finished, our iterator will be pointing at Bob, and then we can call erase. So my strings dot erase. We pass in an iterator, and that will remove Bob from the list. Now before I run my loop down here to display everything, I need to set the iterator back at the beginning. so sometimes you'll see the for loops written like this anyways. And there's our list again, and you can see that Bob has been erased. You have two other functions for erasing information from the list. One of those is pop front. So just like we can push front, we can pop front, and we can pop back. And if we erase Bob, pop front, and pop back, we should be left with just two names. We get Dave and Samuel. And that's the basics of working with the list. Let's say, though, we were working with pointers instead of just string objects. If you needed to work with a list of pointers, the first thing you're going to do is change your data type to a pointer type. And then when you push back and push front, you need to push pointers. So in this case here, we can type new string, and that's going to put this object out on the heap. And I would go ahead and change all of these to match that. The next thing I need to do is change my iterator as well, because it's also going to be a pointer iterator. And now, anywhere we're dereferencing anything, we have to dereference twice, because if we want to get to the actual string, we have to go through the iterator, and then we have to go through the pointer. So it's a double dereference on our while loop here for removing Bob, and it will also be a double dereference here where we need to see out. Now let's try that. Okay, this works, but my erase and my pop front and pop back functions are going to create memory leaks, because that's only going to remove that pointer from the list. It's not actually going to delete the object. So before I erase or pop anything, I need to delete that object. So I can call delete on my dereferenced iterator. And that should delete the object, and then I can erase that pointer. And now we can see that Bob is gone and there is no memory leak.